and the idea that you are the creator of your life. You know, you get to create your moments, you get to create every aspect that designs the life that you want to live. That all takes alchemy. That all takes internal navigation, because the internal thoughts direct and create your results in life, right? So as you think, the world rises up around you. So you're every moment you're constructing the world around you.
What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Patrick Cook. Welcome to Being. Being is a place where we gather to explore some of life's most difficult questions. What does it mean to lead a meaningful life? What does it mean to live a life of purpose or on purpose? How do we make sense of the world? Really, what we're asking is, what the hell is going on? My intention with this podcast is to explore what it means to be human in the modern world through the lens of creativity, consciousness, and personal development. Being ventures to make collective sense of an increasingly complex world with the unifying goal of building a sustainable future for all. As humanity continues to march full steam towards extinction, we can no longer afford to simply ask, what is best for me? The question now must become, what is best for me and the whole simultaneously? And so, dear audience, I want to inspire you to take full responsibility, to find your purpose, and to engage your evolution as a conscious agent. I challenge you to live your being. If you're enjoying the content, please do subscribe to the show and get a new episode delivered directly to your device every Friday. And as always, I love hearing from you. So please do rate and review the episode on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or whichever platform you prefer. For show notes and more information, head on over to being-podcast.com. Now, on with the show. My guest today is most commonly known as the photographer of the who's who and some of the world's most highly acclaimed entrepreneurs. Nick Onken is a creative alchemist whose professional and commercial repertoire has no template or limits. According to Nick, it is through creativity that we unlock our true potential and live to the fullest, most authentic version of ourselves. And in a world saturated by fear, lack of time, and confusion, Nick offers a rare type of soothing clarity through daily creative protocols, esoteric musings, and self-expression practices, superbly delivered through the lens of art, photography, design, and coherent spiritual narrative. Nick Onken, welcome to Being. Nick Onken, welcome to Being. What is going on, my brother?
I am being here now.
Yes. Love that answer. Love that answer. Nick and I actually met almost a year ago exactly on like a remote island off the coast of northern Madagascar, of all places, where you can only helicopter or boat in. So that was an interesting time. And sort of my my first impression of you, Nick, was obviously your sense of fashion and flair. You know, you just have this amazing essence to you. That was the first impression. And then as we got to know each other, obviously uncovering your remarkable talent in many regards. But as a photographer, I had the honor of being a client, and we got some great shots in a great location in the middle of friggin' nowhere. So that was awesome. But I was also, astounded with your sort of level of self-awareness and willingness to explore the world and yourself through your creativity and other avenues. And that was really refreshing.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. And I was reading your bio that you sent me, which is fucking awesome as well. And you describe yourself as a creative alchemist. Can you sort of unpack, what does that mean to you?
Well, it really means creative alchemy is doing the work that it takes to access a higher level of creative expression. So, for me and my experience of over the last few years, the consistency of the long run of a creative life, creative journey, whatever you want to call it, is takes so much inner work to alchemize the fears, the thoughts, the feelings, and just the daily life world of life that happens, and to realize that it's all happening for you, but also you have to do the work to alchemize all of that stuff to get to a space of creation, right? So even if you consider, I consider, I think everyone is creative. A creative. They are a creator. Doesn't mean they're an artist. But everyone's art is different. Some people, it's they're entrepreneurs and their art is their business. Some people enjoy painting on the side. Some people, it is a full-time hustle, art and creativity. Your art could be anything. I think the idea of creativity and creating your life, really.
Totally.
And the idea that you are the creator of your life. You get to create your moments. You get to create every aspect that designs the life that you want to live. That all takes alchemy. That all takes internal navigation, because the internal thoughts direct and create your results in life, right? So as you think, the world rises up around you. So you're every moment you're constructing the world around you, and then you're executing and taking action off of those, or you're not taking action. Those or those thoughts will talk you into just laying on the couch and doing nothing, or whatever that is, right? Like it's the creative alchemy is taking you to the space of creativity. It's the 80% that gets you just to the baseline of starting to put the pen on the paper. For instance, the pen on the paper could be anything, whether that's actual, like we just talked about, actual creation, or just creating the life that you want.
Yeah, totally. I totally agree with you. And it says in your bio, again, every minute of every day we're creating through moments, experiences, and meaningful interactions. So like you said, you don't necessarily have to be an artist to recognize that you are creating your own reality, which is kind of a mind-bending thing to sort of wrap your head around. So, and I think that's kind of what a lot of people, they stay in the dark or in the unconscious because they just don't understand it. So did you have a moment or like an experience or like a breakthrough where you're just like, wait a minute, I'm in control of my life here and I am creating my own reality? Like, how did you come to that sense of awareness?
Yeah, I mean, like it's gone through a few different levels, right? But the first one was reading Tim Ferriss's book of, a 4-hour work week, like
Cool.
however many 20 years ago. That gave me the idea that I can design the life that I want, right? Like design, I've started out as a graphic designer. That was my first career. So like you apply principles of design to just your everyday life. And, I went through a handful of years, and then like probably a good 3 years ago, I went through, and my business over the last 10 years of the commercial side of photography started to decline. And I went through a whole emotional spiral in that respect, which spurred and inspired doing some, emotional intelligence work, which I took this course in LA called MITT, Mastery and Transformational Training. It's kind of like a landmark, basically basic emotional intelligence type of stuff.
Cool.
And that opened up a lot of possibility and a lot of a new framework to think from. And then that was kind of another, expansion, if you will, or space. And then a few years ago, I was in a relationship that was pretty toxic to a certain point, and like I was at the same time trying to figure out my commercial photography career. And I was just in another dark. I broke up with I got broke up with that girl, that woman, and just went into a complete dark night of the soul.
Yeah,
and not necessarily, because of her. It just put me into that space of life where I started contemplating and questioning the existence of everything and why we're here. And essentially we're just like these like beings, just like Durga walking around wandering this world trying to just like figuring out how to exist, right? So I did some plant medicine through that journey. I did meditation. I've always been doing meditation for a long time. Breath work is really kind of a big thing that got me integrated back into this reality, and just kind of back on my feet. And it's been a good 3 year process of, and it's still constant everyday alchemy, everyday work to alchemize those feelings, to understand, balance this 3D, 5D reality that we live in. And now I'm even going, like taking things deeper, plant medicine journeys, but also just reading different literatures and, ideas of perhaps we're all in a simulation.
Yeah.
Just like all these different ideas, which I think are fascinating to me. And
Me
that's
too.
just kind of where I'm at in the journey. So, it's been beautiful. And, I'm kind of definitely back into a space of creation and, excited about life and what I'm up to and all that stuff.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait to hear more about what you're up to, but it's a couple more questions. Like the dark night of the soul, like you described you sort of having a breakup that sort of triggered it, and some disenfranchisement with your work. Like my journey almost echoes the exact same thing. Like I was writing jingles for corporations and it was like the business was declining. I'm like, really, does this resonate for me? And that sort of triggered my like, okay, wait a minute. There's the whole other world going on here that I'm not even aware about. Do you think it's necessary? And then alcohol was a big part of my journey as well. Like I was just drinking. That was my, I'm Irish Catholic. That's what you do, anytime you have a problem, you go to the pub. Right. So it was kind of baked into my culture that's how you deal with problems. You just go have a pint. But I got to a point where I recognized that's just an unsustainable solution. But my question is like, is it necessary to have some dark night of the soul or some breakdown, some rock bottom in order to start coming to these awarenesses? Because in my opinion, we need to do this en masse immediately, like as far as awakening and self-awareness and personal transformation work. So how can we help whoever the listeners are sort of take that first step if they're on the cusp without having to go into the dark holes?
I kind of honestly think you need to be in the dark hole.
Yeah, right.
And, you need the universe to hit you with the cosmic brick. I think the thing is like, you gotta listen to the cosmic brick or the cosmic brick is going to get bigger and bigger until you do listen, right? And, I realize for me, like you can have a head knowledge, but like the embodied knowledge, the experiential knowledge is completely different, And, I think this year has been a good cosmic brick for a lot of people.
Totally,
man. It was another cosmic brick for me too.
Me too.
I did. When in March when all this stuff started, all my stuff got canceled. I didn't think I was ever going to work again. I didn't know people are dropping dead in the streets. At least that's what we think we saw.
Yeah, right.
And I was like friggin' like sanitizing everything in my apartment and stuff like that. And then not all is what meets the eye, but I think this year has definitely shaken up a lot of people in a good way. But I do believe you need a shakeup because like it's like that thing, right? Like you can't help a friend until they're ready to be helped. And that help is like they still got to do it on their own. Like you have to do this work on your own. No one's going to do it for you. And being in that toxic relationship is the same thing. Like I couldn't force her to do the work. I couldn't like make her happy. That was a big thing I learned in that relationship. And so I had to choose. I was like, I could either be in a relationship with someone who was always angry and triggered every day, or I could not. And it took me 3 times, but I decided not at a certain point. And that's the thing is like, you're never going to, you can always create conversations. You can help people understand and become aware of these dark nights or these, awakening opportunities. But until that person's ready, and they're desperate to get out of it and they're desperate to do the work, I don't know. I mean, that's where I had to be. And I know a lot of people that I've talked to who've gone through like dark nights of the soul. It's like they had to go through that to have the motivation to want to feel whole again, to want to feel better, to want to have purpose, to want to like create a better space in their life. I think that is a huge piece of it. I don't know. I mean, that's what it was for me. So I can't say that's what it is for everyone, but I do think that it's a pretty big piece of the pie, of the puzzle.
Totally. Something you said at the beginning is recognizing that life is happening for you, not to you. And that's sort of becoming aware of those, glimpses that the universe is giving you before you get hit with the massive brick. It's like the bricks started to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and for me, it was like my body started breaking down from the alcohol. And it's like, sooner or later, what I'm trying to say is, like, before people get to the point where it's either, a diagnosis or an accident or a DUI or, a death in the family or their own death before they wake up, is there some way to sort of wake them up? And what were you gonna say?
I mean, I think it's maybe just like, hey, if the cosmic bricks are hitting you, listen, because they're going to get bigger. And it's like you were just saying, like, sometimes it takes a fucking car accident for people to realize, like, oh shit, I've got to like dive into follow my own white rabbit and understand and like try to see where my true self is and start to see what my existence means here and like then create that, right?
Yeah,
because we're meaning making machines. Like, yes, our meaning of being here is created on our own.
Yes,
that's like our own decisions.
So, what are we here for, in your opinion?
I mean, that's different for everyone, right? But,
totally.
Like everyone's purpose is their own. I think, for me, I'm realizing like I want to live the best life. Experience this life to the fullest and also inspire other people to do that and to live their higher selves and to be free and live a life of freedom and a life of creative expression.
Totally.
That's my mission is to like inspire people and help people to do that.
Yeah, me too. I think mine echoes almost exactly. But what you're saying about, you can't force people to do it, but you can lead by example. You can be a role model and in the way you show up in the world. And I think that's exactly what you're talking about. So kudos to you for doing that. I think what the other thing that sort of came up for me when you were talking about your relationship is that sense of sovereignty and that sense of wholeness within ourselves. Like so often specifically in romantic relationships, but all areas of our life, we're looking externally for control or validation or affection or trying to make sense of the world. We're always looking outward when all the answers are really on the inside, right? So was there something that you learned about being that whole creative sovereign person, maybe through that relationship or throughout your life, that sort of cemented that idea in for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was like a bit of a battle for me during that relationship because I think it takes two sovereign, independent people to create a solid relationship together. Otherwise, you create codependency and. I've definitely had my codependent natures, especially in that relationship. And, and I think a lot of it, it started to feel itchy at a certain point because I was like compromising my own feelings and my own like well-being to coddle her and to make her feel okay and to make her feel happy because like she was just never happy. It was always like at a certain point it was like a ticking time bomb before I felt like something like what every day was gonna be like, when's the ball gonna drop today kind of thing. And that was when I was just like, okay,
that's no way to live.
Need to like it's it still took me 3 tries to get to actually break up. Those probably because of codependent issues, right? Like my own codependency keeping me in a relationship that I wasn't supposed to be in. But it was all in the right time and it was all how it was meant to be. That's also something that we gotta like take perspective on, is that you learn the lessons when you need to learn them. So I'm taking have you heard of the Gene Keys?
Yes, I have. Incredible.
So I'm taking the Venus sequence course online right now.
Wow, how is it?
It's really interesting, but like that's what he talks about. And the first thing he talks about how like every relationship you're in is for a purpose.
Totally.
And it's to teach you the things that you're here to heal and to shift and to change and all of that. So I'm excited to keep going. I just started it. So
awesome.
It's fascinating.
And if you don't learn the lesson in any situation or relationship and you get out of it and you're just going to jump into another relationship that has the same attributes before you learn the lesson, that's like the cosmic bricks will just get bigger until you learn that lesson and you move on to the next level, right?
Exactly. Cosmic bricks everywhere. They're just like raining.
Dude, I'm totally going to steal that. I love that phrase, cosmic bricks. I've never heard it described like that.
Do it. Yeah, I did a quote post on my Instagram with that like a few weeks ago.
Awesome. So, right on.
Just out of another conversation, you know?
Yeah. So I'm interested. So you're such a creative human being in so many regards. I'm interested to ask you, like, how would you describe your current relationship with your creativity and how has it changed over time?
My current relationship is, I think before like 20 years ago, I was like really just focused on one thing.
Right.
At first it was graphic design, and then I moved into photography, did that for about 15 years, still doing it, still doing photography. I've just pivoted into more personal branding for entrepreneurs and personalities and, musicians and people and things like that. So I think you've got to learn how to pivot in different times.
Totally. Adaptability is key.
So I've had to learn that lesson a lot over the last few years. Seriously, once you think one thing's going and then you're like, cosmic brick happens and you're like, oh, I got to like pivot. So for me, like I've just expanded and like, I mean, you can see the art behind me. It's just like, that's another piece of my art. And I make custom hats now. It's another canvas. Now I'm just see kind of everything as a canvas, right?
Yes.
So I'm working right now on pulling my own personal brand together under one umbrella with one kind of creative alchemy vision. And then that's going to infuse and inspire all the different mediums that I like to like play with. You know? So for me going now and forward, it's like, okay, how can I stay in my creative zone of genius, my zone of genius, which is creativity and being the creative, and then start delegating as much as I can of the marketing stuff, of the operations stuff and the tech stuff, but like that takes some also commercialization and productization to be able to fund that, right? Yeah. So, for me, I'm seeing creativity as like a bigger vision. Maybe hiring I've started to hire other designers to create stuff for me, for my brand, for my different things. Like I just did a Creative Alchemy patch. That I'll be selling and also putting inside the hats, and it's got like a little mushroom on there with like a white rabbit, and but it's like I had I was able to hire another designer because I like his work, and I knew that he would be able to actually execute what I was thinking better than I could, right? And that's how most more creative art director level type of people think, and so it's a bit of that, versus, but I've also utilized photography and built a name in that space to help me. I'm leveraging that to make all the connections that I'm making. And I love it. I mean, I still love photography. It's so much fun, and I love photographing people, and it's still kind of my first medium love. But it's still fun to play in all these other different areas.
Yes.
And, like, have my hands in all these different pots, but I think I've been creating a brand that's becoming more and more cohesive, and that's like the goal.
Yeah, awesome. I totally resonate with that as well. Like I'm in the same boat. So I'm doing music, I'm doing podcasting, I'm doing coaching, and sort of just having them cohesive and from one perspective. The world coming through me through one lens, like creating through one lens. But delegation is something that I'm really struggling with as well. Like when you are so particular, you do have a vision. It's tough to, even if it's the marketing or the business or the accounting, to sort of let go of that. And that's kind of a brick that I'm dealing with right now, is letting go of some control of the whole ship, and so I can stay in my creative genius though. Right. And that's the whole point, is that people like you and I want to stay in that creative zone, and then all the stuff that has to happen on the sides, and we need to be able to delegate in order to have the time and energy and bandwidth to stay in that creative zone. And that's for me a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenge for me too, and I'm just at the beginning of it. I used to have an assistant full time in the office, which was huge.
Yeah,
And,
right.
we accomplished so much more.
Totally.
But then my revenue dipped, and like now have had to rebuild my revenue just to be able to pay for somebody,
Right.
to be able to afford an assistant to like create the time, because that assistant creates more time for you to do more other things. And,
Yeah, exactly.
it's like I got to rebuild again. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out what that looks like over the next year.
Yeah, for sure. But it's just another way to learn or cultivate more self-awareness. Like, okay, where am I resisting? Why do I not want to let go of control of certain things?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and then it's a revenue thing too.
Yeah,
and
totally.
This year just like slapped us all in the face.
100%. Yeah,
So it's kind of rebuilding and then like being able to do it again, right?
Yeah.
And then it is really about the control and letting go and seeing where you can go with that.
And that's a good metaphor for, life and personal transformation. It's all about surrender, all about, because there's no control. We have no control other than ourselves, right? So we're constantly looking outside of ourselves for control, and it never works. So that's a big lesson to learn for sure. Coming to terms with surrender. Were you? I find a lot of these, traits and shit we learned as kids. Because when we're kids, we're taking on information and patterns and beliefs and all that conditioning from our parents or guardians, whoever's raising us, and so we come imprinted with certain conditioning that we carry into adulthood, and most of it's happening in the unconscious, which is why we're sort of asleep and on autopilot, until we have the wherewithal to look at that shit and it's like, oh, wait a minute, all those beliefs, like, are they really serving me anymore? Are they in alignment with who I am? And so what I wanted to ask you is, were you supported as being creative as a child, or is that something you sort of had to cultivate on your own?
I was always supported as a creative.
Awesome.
Thank God my parents were very, very supportive in that nature. They always encouraged me to do what I wanted to do and all that. I think that the other part of the conditioning was I was brought up in a very like conservative Christian upbringing. So I was also conditioned in that. And while I was, up until like I kind of graduated from high school, I was like living under that like construct. And I think through that whole time I always had a really hard time resonating with it. But like I was just like, my friends were all there and I had like a lot of great friends in that space.
Yeah.
So I played the part, and then I realized afterwards that like it was just, it didn't resonate with me, and I had to like take a, walk away from that world.
Yeah.
And within that world, the way that my dad showed up to me was like, I felt like he was always judging me. I subconsciously thought that my dad was always judging me.
Totally. And that's an example of a limiting belief, right? Thinking that you're being judged, it influences your choices and behavior without you knowing it.
Yeah. And it was, I didn't even know it until probably 8 years ago when I did the MITT. That's kind of where I realized that I picked up that judgment feeling. So it was like me judging others, me feeling judged all the time. It limited my own like vocal expression because I thought that, when I grew up, my dad would always, if we talked about anything about the Word of God and Christianity, he got very verbally affirmative. And then if I talked about anything that was like outside of that or dating or anything, he just shut down and like got quiet and would just like, he was processing, but then like never would have anything to say. So as a kid, I walked away with that. With the impression that like I thought he was judging me.
Right.
And then I felt, it's like the whole Christian garbage, like judgment, non-judgment. Like everybody's always judging you as a Christian.
Totally.
Like no matter what, like you're judged if you don't believe the same way that they do.
Yeah.
And that's pretty shitty.
It is pretty shitty. I grew up Irish Catholic, dude. I know all about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I didn't even realize like how that affected me subconsciously. I never even really thought about it until I started doing this like inner work. And it's been a gradual process since then.
Yeah. Wow, man. Well, that's a perfect example of exactly what we were just talking about. So uncovering those layers of pattern and conditioning. So what do you think, because they can go on for like generations. Like your father learned it from somebody, and he probably learned it from his father, and goes on and on, back and back, right? So to have the courage to sort of uncover those beliefs and sort of break that ancestral line is really challenging for a lot of people, because you are so programmed to continue on doing the same thing. But what do you think your father was going through when he was being silent? Was he didn't understand, or it sort of went against some core values, or what do you think was happening for him?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just went against his belief, his mental construct,
Yeah,
right? And
exactly.
so he didn't know what to do, and he probably learned this from his parents. Like, he didn't know how to have conflicting conversations. Still doesn't, and I inherited that from him as well. And it's something that I'm learning to work through, because I get to work through that, and I realize that I get to work through that. I don't think he really has that awareness. Or even has really gone down that path. Maybe he has, but like, from like our last few conversations, like anything that contradicts his way of thinking, he gets paralyzed with information, and doesn't know how to compute it. And I think, and that's where he's like processing. And I get it now. Like, I totally understand when that happens. I understand what he's doing. And I don't, I'm not running away with the story now, the same story, because I'm aware of it.
Yeah, that's it.
And I get it, and I don't blame him at all. And I've even told him that, like, I don't blame you. It's like, that's just how you did the best with the tools that you had at the time.
Exactly.
We all do.
Exactly. Yeah. I think
it's up to us.
Yeah. Totally. I think what you're describing is cognitive dissonance, when you have these core beliefs and you hold them so deeply, so strongly, and then you have a conversation or evidence that contradicts them. It melts your brain. You can't compute, And I think that's what's happening to a lot of people right now in the world. You said the cosmic brick of 2020 has sort of hit a lot of people in the face. It's like they've held these beliefs on how the world is and how shit operates, and it's like, okay, well, maybe that's not the case, and it's incredibly uncomfortable to come to terms with, okay, maybe my worldview is not so solid.
Yeah.
Would you resonate with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, think of like how sense making is a whole new term right now.
It is. I'm deep into it. It's fucking epic.
Yeah, there's a couple great podcasts. There's Rebel Wisdom.
Oh yeah, dude. I did Rebel Wisdom Sense Making 101 course, and it was the best course I've ever done. It's fucking amazing. Oh, wow. Yeah, you should check it out. Unbelievable.
Yeah, and then I'll have to check. I love that podcast.
Yeah, me too.
And then Free Thinker.
Yes, totally.
Or Future Thinkers.
Future Thinkers. Yeah.
Yeah, that's also a great one.
Totally.
But it is really interesting of like, we're in a narrative warfare.
It is.
Like,
it's exactly what it is.
You can, my narratives are shattered every day now. And I'm just like, I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know either. But being okay with not knowing and not being attached to one worldview, I think, is what you said earlier about adaptability, right? You have to be open to refining your worldview with new information, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is like kind of intaking everything to make your own narrative and your own understanding. But at the end of the day, you just kind of got to like surrender it all and be like, okay, well, I'm just going to create my shit, because I have no control over all the other shit that's happening in the world. And
totally,
I live in my own like little like space here, and then I forget that there's this other world outside sometimes, because like I get so buried in working that I'll like sit here and just like work, not even leave the house in 3 days.
Yeah, totally.
And then I walk outside, I'm like, oh yeah, there's a pandemic or something, or a fake pandemic, real virus, but fake pandemic.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Well, and I'm like, oh, and then I just like I like have these like weird like glitches in the matrix. Like, I'm like, is any of this even real?
Yeah. It's fucked up, right? It's crazy.
After doing mushrooms.
We'll talk about that in a second, but I just wanted to comment on what you just said about, okay, we have no control about what's going on out there, but that can easily, like, the response can easily translate into nihilism, or just, fuck it, I'm going to go get drunk and, screw hookers and do coke, that you can easily go down that path too. But I think the balance is, okay, at least for me, I want to understand as fully and deeply as possible what is actually going on in this reality, like who the power players are, what are the geopolitics, all that, and what's the transfer of money and power and all that shit. But then recognize it also, if I go down that rabbit hole, I can easily get depressed. I can easily go into, fuck, this is too much, and just go into dark places. So understanding what's going on and then coming back to myself on what I can do about it personally, you know? And really that's
absolutely
what we're talking about is personal transformation. Take care of your own shit first.
Yeah, I mean, I even had to like stop going down the conspiracy rabbit holes or just like intaking that, because it was like it was creating fear within me, because like I don't want to, if all that shit is true, like I don't want to live in that world. That's a fucking shitty world.
It is
like,
a shitty world.
Super dystopian. I was like, dude, we could be in like the Handmaid's Tale in like a year.
Totally.
You don't even know.
But at the same time, we don't want to just close our eyes and say, "Oh, that can never happen." And then, you know, I have kids, right? So for me, it's a little more, there's a little more pressures. Like I can't explain to my children when they grow to my age that on my watch, I let this shit happen. I let it go to dystopia, right? Without doing anything about it, right?
Totally.
So
yeah, that's why I posted a quote on my Instagram yesterday called, it was just like, curate your intake.
Yes,
and I think
I saw that.
Talk about
beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you. You talk about like creating awareness. I think we have to create awareness around what we're intaking.
Yes.
And keep taking inventory moment to moment, because like, I don't know if you probably listen to the Tristan Harris.
Yeah, I did. Daniel Schmachtenberger as well.
Yeah, I mean, those dudes, it's so real. Like, you can get down an algorithmic rabbit hole and find yourself completely radicalized on the other end, ready to like fight, which is what they want.
Yeah.
You know, like, how do you destroy America? You don't go against them with your militia. You're never going to win.
Yeah.
But you can destroy it from the inside out with information and algorithms.
Totally.
And then you have like China and Russia basically like feeding fake information on both sides to amplify the algorithms, and pretty soon you're like completely radicalized.
Yeah.
And on the same respect, like, how do you know what the fuck anything is true?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, information, how do you know what information is true?
Yeah, you can't really tell. And that's why sense making is so important. How do we make sense of the world? And it begins, like I mentioned that Rebel Wisdom course. I went into it like, okay, teach me how to make sense of the world. Teach me how to navigate the online space and shit. And the first 3 weeks of a 6-week course was all inner work. It's about presence and, sovereignty and, recognizing when you're emotionally triggered so you don't get hijacked or limbically hijacked. It's all that inner work of self-awareness to recognize when you're getting hijacked by, whatever the narrative is, right? And so I thought that was incredibly, before we even got to the external navigating the information landscape or the narratives shit, it was all inner work, which I thought was fascinating and so true.
I mean, it makes 100% sense.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're right. Like, it is. It really, you have to create, that's exactly what I'm talking about. You have to create the awareness. That's a great way of putting it.
Yeah.
Around what you're intaking. You have to be careful that you're not running your lens of traumas into like the intake of what you're experiencing.
Exactly. You're just getting triggered into traumas or biases or, and that's what the AI does on social media. It figures out what your biases is and then just pushes that button repeatedly to keep you coming back. Right. So you're limbically hijacked.
Exactly.
So, yeah. And I think it's worth saying that, the big tech giants, that's not what their primary goal was. Their primary goal is maximizing, profit for shareholders, right? But the second order effect is polarization of people, The best way to keep you on the site is to push your buttons and keep you emotionally engaged and limbically hijacked, but that also radicalizes you in a certain direction. So you are so polarized in, and then everybody has this, polarized, multipolar view of the world, and that just creates conflict and nobody knows what the fuck's going on and everybody's against each other. Like you said, turn the enemy against itself and it all collapses.
Exactly.
Hey, are you feeling lost, anxious, frustrated by the state of the world? I get it. The world is a pretty messed up place right now. Maybe you're even distracting yourself from the pain with things like alcohol, social media, Netflix, gambling, shopping. I know, I did it for years. This is why I've made it my mission to support brave souls just like you in taking back creative control of your life, finding a deeper sense of purpose, and building a solid foundation of certainty, even in such uncertain times. This is exactly why I have created the Fuck Yes Club. This program is for people who are tired of living in uncertainty and fear, sick of living up to somebody else's standards, fed up with not fulfilling their highest potential. This is for the people who are ready to tap into their infinite well of creative power and start creating the life they have always wanted. We are in the midst of a massive transition. Great change is upon us, and we're being called to grow and evolve in ways that we may have been avoiding. Is it your time? Are you ready? There are only two answers here, people. No and fuck yes. If you are in the fuck yes category, then immediately go to www.thefuckyesclub.com right now for more information and to secure your spot. Now, back to the show.
Have you seen the show The Newsroom?
I have not. No.
Dude, one of the best shows written. It was written by Aaron Sorkin.
Oh, is this years ago?
Years ago.
Yes, I remember that.
Jeff Daniels.
Yes, I did see that. Yeah,
I mean, it was so good, and it was so interesting because like the first season was like bringing like real journalism back, and then the second season is how journalism got hijacked by clickbait.
Yes,
so interesting to see. Beautiful. I love. It's one of my favorite shows.
Yeah,
definitely like recommend watching that.
Totally. So like you just said, is at the root of this is you avoiding being triggered into your traumas. And so cultivating that self-awareness to, every day being able to come back to your center, your creative center. And it's less about what you're creating, but where you're creating from. Right. And so for me, I have daily practices, and I'm sure you do as well, about coming back to that sort of center of that knowingness, that trust within myself, absent of the external world, so I don't get taken away by the fear and the bullshit and the narrative, so I can really center myself and start creating from there. And I find I'm way more effective. I'm way more peaceful, even in the face of chaos and bullshit and pandemic. Do you have practices around that? Like, so I guess my question is, what are some of the practices and techniques that you use to stay grounded, healthy, and creative?
Yeah, I mean, good question, because that's like something I really focused on this year, especially once all this craziness started happening. Like I've really had to double down and like really make it an effort to my first hour of the morning is no phone. I meditate for about 30 to 40 minutes.
Awesome.
And then I'll check my messages, and then I'll work out, put a podcast on, because I think listening to podcasts is a great way to state change, because you can learn about information. I like to do it when I'm working out because it takes my mind off of working out. But I'll usually do like a 20 minute hit, like intensity training, just here in my house. And then I make myself like my protein smoothie bowls, or just like everything I look forward to every morning, and put it, filling my body with nutrients and that kind of thing. So that's kind of my typical, like I try to get like yoga. I do like 5 minutes of yoga within that, just to like get some movement, some stretch, some, I'll put a red light on and do that in front of, like I'll work out in front of a red light.
Cool.
I recently just got the Oculus VR.
Ooh.
The Quest, and there's like some boxing games in there, because I used to box before all this. Like a year ago, I kind of like injured my shoulder, but I love going to the gym and boxing. But now, like, this thing is crazy real, and you get a solid workout. Wow. Like I was like the first few days I did it last week, or I got Drew Canoli, my buddy of mine, like had one. And I was like, I have to get one of these. And so, so I got one, and I've been like boxing in the VR, and it's like there's a Creed game in there, and you can actually like fight. You can be Rocky, or you can be Apollo, whatever. And it's with the haptics of the handles and all this stuff. You can actually. It feels like you're boxing. You get a full-on like shadow box workout. No joke.
You getting punched in the head and shit? How does that work?
Yeah, like they punch you, and like you can punch them. And like if I had a bigger space, I could move around a lot more. Right. But it's literally like in the VR headset, it's like they're standing right in front of you, and you're just like punching them. You can punch bags. They have like the meat locker. You can go punch some meat.
Wow.
You can do they have like Sylvester Stallone like with the pads like as your coach, and you can like punch. Even that's a workout. So I started out with that. So I think a big part of my thing is how can I integrate fitness with the things that I'm, other things that I'm doing. Like yesterday, I probably did like a 25 mile ride around the city, around Central Park. It was nice out, while I was listening to a book. So, it's kind of like productivity stacking.
Yeah.
And so I try to stay active as much as I can while still doing other things. I feel like the days just go by. I've got so much to do. And
Yeah.
I'm always creating stuff and working on stuff and bouncing back and forth between projects. But
Cool.
yeah, that's kind of like my grounding is the meditation, Vedic meditation. And then sometimes I'll do Joe Dispenza meditations as well.
Those are
which I
awesome.
love,
Yeah.
for sure.
I'm not
And
crazy
then
about his voice, but the content is amazing. He's a little dry.
I don't know why he does
Right?
some of the stuff that he does. It like almost takes you out of the meditation.
Totally. I'm glad somebody else said it. Like, I love Joe. He's like a big fan of his work, but his meditations are like,
same here.
oh,
You're
fuck,
like,
dude. I don't know. I can't do it.
I think you got to go to the more original meditations that he's done.
All right.
Now with the newer ones, he kind of starts to do the whole like singing weird thing
Oh,
to
shit.
the music.
He does chanting and shit?
No. It's just like he says the words kind of in a singy.
Okay.
But he doesn't do it as much as he used to in the beginning. I don't know. It's so weird. And why he didn't read Becoming Supernatural himself, I don't get it. Like he had some Australian, I'm like,
interesting.
That was just, like when authors have a speaker's voice and they don't read their own books, it's just strange to me.
That is bizarre. Yeah.
I just listened to Matthew McConaughey's book, and it's great.
Okay.
Like, so many great life lessons in there, and he reads it, and he's so animated, and he's just like, you just like love the guy.
Yeah, and he's got
like,
that Texas drawl. It's charming.
Texas drawl. He's
know?
like, dude, and as he talks about like when he was like hit his level of fame, he just like had to get out, and he just like bought a trailer and drove around the U.S. by himself. Like when he because he needed like his own sovereignty. Like he needed to create his own sovereignty again because he was this known person.
Yeah.
And such a great book, great lessons, great life lessons.
Cool.
And audio, he reads it. It's great.
Awesome. Cool. So on a typical day, like after your grounding shit, like how do you get into the creative mode? How do you get into the flow? Like how can you describe your creative process?
Yeah, I mean, every day is different. When I'm home, it's usually very similar. When I'm traveling, it's completely different. So when I'm home, it's usually I do all that stuff and then I sit down and start working and just kind of like I have a list of stuff to do and kind of do that. And then I'll intermittently make hats just to like break up the computer work and stuff like that. If I have a shoot, then I'll sometimes have to get up early, pop out, do a shoot. But when I'm, I probably travel. I've been traveling probably a couple weeks a month on average, even since like probably June or July. End of July is when I traveled for the first time after the quarantine stuff.
Right.
Just only all in the U.S. around like L.A., Arizona, Sedona, like all those places. And everything's different. Sometimes, it's usually like when I travel, it's around hanging out with friends, doing photo shoots. It's usually booked. I'll book a couple shoots and then do the shoots and then hang out and explore. And I spent a week in Sedona. Cool. I had one shoot the first day and then we did that. And then the next 5 days hung out and went hiking and
sick.
So that's inspiring as well. And like hanging out with the people that I hang out with also is inspiring. Like hanging out with my buddy Drew in Sedona, like he's the founder of this company called Organifi, and so it's like even just hanging with him, I got to learn stuff. We got to create together. We got to go hiking together, and he's a super spiritual dude. So, I think being in, I think we talk about curating. It's curating your friends, curating the people that you're surrounding yourself with.
Totally,
and that's also a piece of grounding for me. Is like having these conversations and having expansive conversations with the people in my life.
Totally. Recognizing that we are energetic beings. And so we have this aura and what we allow into it is very important. We need to curate that shit. And whether that's people or food or alcohol or media or books or whatever it is, we have to be careful about what gets in there.
Totally.
Yeah, totally. Man. One of the things I struggle with, and you sort of touched on it a bit, is how to prioritize my time and schedule it. Because I'm a creative as well. I'm totally free flow, man. Like I'm shit with scheduling. It's awful. And it's like, that's going to be my New Year's resolution this year is like, I got to get better at, and it's kind of the same that you're talking about. Like, I just like whatever is present for me, I go into that flow, right? If I have something I have to do in this moment, sure, I'll do that. but allowing myself the space to and to do whatever is present and flow without getting hijacked or going down rabbit holes or getting on Facebook or any of that shit, right? So I guess the question is, how do you prioritize your time and your schedule during the day?
That's a great question, because I'm so much in the flow, and like I've been working on my focus.
Yeah.
Actually, one thing that's really helped me is my friend's company, My Formula.
Okay.
Which is like nootropics. So
Right.
it's kind of like a customized nootropics brand. So you take a test online, and it kind of spits out like a general framework of like what your first batch is, and you experiment with those to see which ones you like.
Right.
I've definitely noticed a huge difference in being able to like be more productive and focused when I'm in front of the computer, because that stuff I'm like, it's like you're talking about. It's like I get jumped down. I start checking my Instagram. I start doing all this stuff, and then I'm like
3 hours goes by.
I have 8 things that I'm doing at once.
Yeah.
Because I just like I think of something, and then by the time, like, if I don't write it down or open it up, then I'll forget about it.
Do you think that ruins your creative flow though? By if you don't do that, that's kind of the fear I have. Is like, if I don't follow these sort of creative impulses, then I'm going to miss out on something, right?
Yeah, I try to like kind of just go in the flow, but I also create like a to-do list, and I kind of do it by time priority.
Right.
That's I guess how I prioritize is what's the most time sensitive.
Yeah.
And then I attack that first, and then I get that out of the way and move on to the next thing, and then assess like how urgent something is.
Right.
In regards to deadline, in regards to the bigger picture of business, of like what do I need to accomplish first.
Yeah.
Sitting down to like just focus on one project in front of a computer, I'm just not. I'm not good at it.
You think
not good at it?
Do you think that's an attribute of creative people, or what is it?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's also probably like our I call it adult ADD, but basically just our technology. Attention spans.
Yeah.
And now after watching Social Dilemma, and I did a dopamine detox this summer, a couple of them.
Right on.
Which was very interesting, and it definitely kind of is a good reset. It was basically 24 hours, only obviously sleeping, nothing except for journaling, meditation, exercise, and eating.
Beautiful. Love it.
But not eating like junk or like
not emotionally eating
type of foods.
Yeah, right.
Well, yeah, like no sugar, no anything like that, because you get a hit of dopamine from that. So, and it really was a great reset.
I bet.
I probably need to do another one again here soon.
Have you ever experimented with fasting?
No, but I was just in a conversation last week talking about fasting, and I kind of want to try it.
It's next level for sure. I do here in Costa Rica. They've got amazing coconuts, so it's peepa water, it's got electrolytes and a little bit of sugar. But if you just drink electrolytes I did it 6 days in a row with no food. Woo. You learn a lot of shit about yourself, dude. About how much time you waste. How the big thing for me is how much I eat for procrastination. Like if I'm sitting here doing work and I'm just like, okay, I've sort of done this, maybe I'll just go have some lunch or something. It's like, it's not because I'm hungry. It's rarely because I'm hungry. It's just because I want to do something else or have that dopamine hit, right? And so I actually, on the last fast, I wrote down every time I had an impulse to go eat while I was working. And by the end of the day, there was like 50. It's like, holy shit. That's how often, like unconsciously I just get up and go eat something. It's not because I'm hungry. It's just because I want to do something else or get that dopamine hit, right?
Yeah,
and so,
I love food.
Me too. I love it. Yeah, I'm a foodie, but at the same time, I think what we're talking about is having cultivate enough self-awareness to know when, okay, this is just something I enjoy and I'm going to do it consciously, or am I just checking out? You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's a fine line. But having that awareness just around food, then you can translate it into everything you're doing in your life, right? And sort of apply that model. Okay, am I doing this because, it's just some checking out, or I want to not think about it or procrastinate, or am I doing it consciously, right?
Yeah, definitely something I want to try.
Yeah, totally, man. Cool, brother. Well, this is awesome. We could talk all fucking day. This is amazing, but I just want to be cognizant of your time. So I'll just ask you a few more questions. One of the favorite questions I like to ask my guests is, what is your definition of success, and how has it changed over time?
I think my definition of success now is really kind of how can I live a balanced, creative life and have enriched relationships. I don't know. Well, maybe like it's changed over the years. Like I always used to want to be like this commercial successful photographer, which I did. And that was a big piece of it. And then I realized that wasn't like, I was getting my self-worth from that, and it wasn't fulfilling as, and I've like had to, I think over the last few years going through all this work, I've really like detached from a lot of the ego stuff around any of that. Which is huge. So now, I mean, success to me is just like living the life that I want to live, with the relationships of the people that I love.
Beautiful. Again, exactly what we're just talking about is recognizing, what is valuable to you in this moment, rather than what, maybe your parents wanted you to do or what society wanted you to do. Like you wanted to be a successful commercial photographer, but you recognize that maybe there's some ego in there. Maybe that's some of your parents saying you should do this. You know what I mean? So constantly being open to refining it again is that adaptability. Okay, is this really what I want, or is this really what's valuable to me? I think is super important. So you just nailed it. So what's something unexpected? Because you've done a lot of traveling and met a lot of people. So what's something unexpected you've learned about humanity in your travels?
Unexpected, I think just it probably goes back to the first time I went to the developing world. It was just like such a shock to the shock to the system, like to see other people doing life in a space where they might not have necessarily made that much money. Or they were living in a house that was like a mud hut with grass roof. Sweeping the dirt off the dirt every day. And I think that's been such a huge piece of experience, and experiencing that consistently and regularly over the years is like it's always been a great reminder of just how good we have it.
Right, coming back to the gratitude, it's right behind you. Joy and gratitude, man, that's it. Tuning into those higher vibrations.
100%.
I don't know if you're up for it, man, but I'd love to hear your take on what is going on in the world, like within the context of we're trying to make sense of it, right? Rather than just some bullshit conspiracy theory that we might have read, because I think it's valuable to have sense-making conversations, right? So would you be open to it?
I mean, yeah. It's probably like
it's a rabbit hole. I know,
it's a whole conversation. I think over just an overview is I don't think things are what like we've been told.
Yeah, right.
I think there's not enough questioning of what's happening because people just want to be told how to live and what to do.
Totally.
That's also the opening to be surveilled and controlled. And I think that, I mean, I don't know what's true. I think take everything with a grain of salt, conspiracy stuff, right-wing patriot stuff, left-wing fake woke stuff. I think it's all a narrative that we've chosen to buy into. And I don't know if there's any necessarily there's not one right way, or there's not one truth. There's so many truths out there. And I don't know if you've ever heard Ken Wilber's work, but he talks about integral theory and how like to get to a space where you're all inclusive of everything. And, there's shadow and there's light within everything. There's some truth to everything. So I don't see how you can take on one specific narrative. I mean, there's pieces of the right-wing narrative that I think are true. There's pieces of the left-wing narrative that I think there's pieces of the conspiracy narratives that I think are true. So where does that put me? I don't know. I mean, I just have to surrender to like what is and be aware of it, make other people question. I think opening up other people's eyes to questioning the narrative. Questioning the motives of what's all going on, because if you look at everything is run by money.
Yes.
Look at that, like the whole, and I love capitalism because like I'm able to do what I do because of capitalism.
Yep.
But at the same time, you have all these big companies that everything's bought, right? The lobbyists, the companies, big pharma, big agriculture, big agriculture making people sick so that big pharma can pretend like they're healing them and just they all just profit, right?
Yeah, totally.
So, what's the motives? It's like questioning the motives behind that. I think Robert Kennedy Jr. is really great. I think his narrative is really like, let's question what's happening.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on?
Totally.
Why are people questioning things getting silenced and censored and deleted and all these different things? Because they question what the mainstream narrative is.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest thing is to start questioning things. Like do research on like what doesn't make sense. Does like you look at the whole timeline of this COVID thing and nothing makes sense.
Yeah.
Nothing adds up.
Yeah.
So I think, question everything, don't just take things at face value.
Beautiful, dude. That was amazing. I love it. I think another way to say it is find the signal in the noise. That's a bit one of the sense making 101 on Rebel Wisdom. Daniel Schmachtenberger specifically talks about. So there's so many different narratives. None of them is right and none of them is whole, but there is some signal, some truth in each of them, and there's a lot of noise around it. So it's our job to sort of sift through everything and not get attached to one narrative as, this is what I believe and everything else is wrong, because that's what the AIs are doing to you on social media. You're polarizing you into one position, right? So being open and adaptable to refining your worldview and asking the deeper questions and finding the signal amongst the noise to sort of construct a worldview that makes sense amongst the madness.
Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome, dude.
Totally.
All right. One last question for you, brother, before I let you go. If you were to take all your experiences, all your knowledge and wisdom gained and distill them down into one message, what would it be?
I think dive into yourself and find your inner truth and live from that space.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Nick Onken, really appreciate your time today, brother.
Appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Yeah, man. You want to let people know where they can find you online?
You can go to my Instagram at Nick Onken, NICKONKEN. You can pretty much get to everything from there. You can always check out onken.co. That's like my main website.
Amazing.
You get to everything from there as well.
Right on, brother. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
All right, man. Have a great day.
You too.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. And if you enjoyed the show, please do subscribe, rate, and review. For more information and show notes, head on over to being-podcast.com. We'll see you next time, and remember, live your being.